guys, and welcome to Pickles and Vodka, the unfiltered mental health podcast dedicated to sharing the stories of people like you and me who are struggling but might not have an outlet to share about it. To be honest, I have been working on this intro for like 10 minutes now, and I keep losing the words to continue because it's so hot in my room. And by hot, I mean like 84 degrees, but this is Seattle we're talking about, and people here don't believe in air conditioning. So I'm going to keep this short and finish editing this in a nice, cool coffee shop later on. But first I want to talk about something that happened this week real quick, which was my 27th birthday. I don't know if a lot of you know, but this year I wasn't even sure I was going to reach my birthday alive. And so it definitely carried some mixed connotations. I'm someone who's always hated her birthday. Even as a kid, it gave me so much anxiety, and I've always hated the pressure that society puts on you to, do something big or see a lot of people because, not everyone has the time or the friends or the energy for that. So I was expressing my concerns to my therapist, and he said, if you don't feel like doing anything, then don't do anything. Just enjoy yourself and have a quiet day. And so that's exactly what I did. I went hiking. I dyed my hair. I did a little bit of cleaning because that's what I do. It was honestly such a lovely day. I barely spoke to a single person outside of all the people who called me and texted me. And yeah, I would 10 out of 10 recommend that approach if you're someone like me who hates their birthday. I have some great guests lined up in the following weeks. And as always, if you have a topic that you have experience with in regards to mental health, hit me up at picklesandvodkapodcast@gmail.com or on any of my social media links, and I will be happy to host you as a guest. Really excited for this week's guest. She's going to be talking about OCD and all the ways it affects her life and her various coping methods. You guys are going to love her. Also, I want to give myself a little shout out because this week the podcast hit 500 downloads, which to some might not be a lot, but I was freaking out about it. So thank you guys for listening. I didn't really know where this would go when I started it, but the fact that it's still around and that there's people invested in it makes me so happy, and I wouldn't be here without you guys. So thank you. All right, here's my interview with Diana. I hope you guys enjoy. Hey, can you hear me okay?
Hey. Yeah, good. Can you hear me?
Yes, and more importantly, I hit record this time.
Oh, perfect.
In case you guys didn't hear the last time that we tried recording an episode, I didn't hit record until we were like a half hour into our conversation.
Yeah.
And by then we had to say goodbye, so it was really sad.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a good practice run.
Yeah. So, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell the listeners what you do, how old you are, that kind of thing?
All right. Well, I'm going to be walking circles around my neighborhood because I'm a walk and talker. So
Perfect.
If you hear street noises or bird noises, it's because I'm taking a walk. But all right. My name is Diana. I'm 23 years old. I was born and raised in Chicago. Then I went to New York for college, and when I graduated, I came back to Chicago, where I now live and work. I work as a technician in a biochemical engineering research lab. And
is that what you studied in college?
Yeah, my major was biochemistry.
Okay.
So this is very within my field. And then in 2 short months, I'm going to be moving to Southern California to start graduate school in molecular biosciences.
How do you feel about moving so far away?
I want to, because, my family's here in Chicago, and there are pluses and minuses to family. And I think, it's time for me to be a real adult and go far, far away. And also I'm just excited about moving to California.
Yes,
I've visited there a few times, but I've never lived there. So, the land where, rent is expensive and weed is cheap.
I still haven't been to any part of California.
I visited the university, like to interview for the graduate program. I visited the university, and like I visited in February, and it was basically a tropical paradise.
Oh my God.
Like this was right after the polar vortex in Chicago last February. So like I had just endured negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh my God.
And then like a week or two later, I fly over to California, and everyone there is wearing like puffer jackets and long sleeves and long pants because it's like 60 instead of 80. And I'm like, you guys, like, do you not understand that you are living in a tropical paradise right now? Like, it's so fucking beautiful. Like, I'm on vacation. They're like, we're having a really cold winter.
Oh my God, shut up. I grew up in Chicago too, and so
Yeah.
I feel you. Like, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Just
You don't
wait.
know what winter is.
Exactly. So this is a mental health podcast.
Yes.
Would you like to talk a little bit about your mental health journey?
I guess my diagnosis is OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Along with that, I get some really fun symptoms of like depression and anxiety, and I've had some struggles with self-harm and substance abuse in the past. And all of that, I think, like all of those experiences, the way I think about it ties back to my OCD and how, what it does to my life.
There's a lot of depictions in pop culture and media of OCD, and I think it can be easy to think of it as something it's not. Would you mind giving like a
Yes.
definition?
All right, yeah, the media representations they're kind of caricatures. They're not like totally off base, but they also get a lot of important things wrong. And also like the way OCD is used colloquially is like, people who like their stuff organized and clean and like to clean their houses are like, oh, I'm so OCD. Like I really like to keep my kitchen clean. I'm like, that's not true OCD, because like OCD is a mental illness, and a mental illness is defined as a condition that causes a person distress, like it's impacting their life negatively and they have distress related to their experience, and that's why it's an illness. Like people who just like keeping their kitchen clean because it makes them happy, like that's not an illness.
Right.
So the way OCD is used is usually not accurate. So yeah, to explain how I experience it, as the name would suggest, there are two components. There are the obsessions and then the compulsions, and they tend to be related as a cause and effect type of thing. So obsessions will be when your mind fixates on certain ideas or concepts or worries or anxieties, usually, and you'll have this thought and then it will nag at you and you can't get it out of your head, and like you're literally obsessing about it, like it's causing you distress and anxiety, this thought or set of thoughts or whatever it may be, and they're really like just ruining your day. And in an attempt to like alleviate these obsessions and make them go away, people will engage in compulsions, which are behaviors or actions or something that they do in real life, I guess, not in their heads, like an action that will relieve the anxiety that the obsession creates. So this way they are related. Someone will have an obsession and it will cause them a lot of distress, and in order to try to get rid of it, they will do an action or set of actions multiple times over and over to try to relieve it.
Those negative coping mechanisms that you mentioned at the beginning, would you consider those compulsions?
Definitely. I mean, the way that mental health is, I guess, like diagnosed and treated and conceptualized in the psychology community, I guess, they tend to break it up very cleanly and make these categories, like, the DSM-5 like gives a diagnosis and a list of symptoms, but in reality, or at least an experience in my life, it's way messier than that. It's like I'll have OCD, but then I'll have symptoms of depression because, the OCD is ruining my life. So then the therapist will be like, oh, you have depression. I'm like, well, like I'm depressed, but I don't think I have depression. And then like the eating disorder thing, I definitely have disordered eating symptoms. But like if I go to a psychologist, they're not going to say like, oh, you have an eating disorder and nothing else. They're going to be like, oh, like your OCD is forcing you to have these extremely disordered behaviors surrounding food. But what's really going on is that you have OCD, and then like from the outside stuff you're doing it's an eating disorder, but it's like that's not it. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, I totally get what you say, and I'll agree that it's not cut and dry. Like everyone's different, and it's not easy to put in a box. and you're not going to find your diagnosis, neatly written out on a piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope everyone knows that just because you said you can't go to a psychologist and have them say you have an eating disorder, that doesn't mean it's not valid.
Oh, yeah. I was definitely not trying to imply that.
Oh, no, I don't think you are. I just wanted to hit it home for the listeners, because I know myself and a lot of people I know struggle with feeling valid in their disorders. As fucked up as that sounds.
Yeah.
They feel like if they don't have the validation from a professional, then they're not bad enough. They have nothing to worry about.
I mean, all the validation you need is the way you experience it in your own head, in your own life,
Right.
Like, if you are experiencing these symptoms and they're causing you distress and they're interfering with your life, like, you're disordered enough. Like, you check that box.
So how old were you when you received the diagnosis for OCD?
Probably like late middle school, like 13-ish. That's around when I started seeking mental health treatment. So since I was a young child, I've always had OCD. Like, I was born with it. I started experiencing symptoms pretty much like as far back as my memory goes. Like, I was an OCD child too, and like, so my entire life.
What does that look like in a child?
Oh, I was actually like thinking about this earlier when I was like coming home from work. I was like, okay, I need to like give concrete examples of what I experience. So
no pressure.
This is something that I pulled out of my memory box. So when I was a young child, probably like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years old, in my bedroom, I had this rug, and the rug had a pattern, like a floral pattern, just like nice things that you put in the kids' room. It had some flowers, it had some stems and leaves, and they were nice and curly and colorful. Great. And I also had like a bunch of toys that were like animal figurines, so just like kids' toys.
Yeah.
And something I would spend hours doing is taking my figurines and arranging them on the carpet, like within the patterns, like, the elephant goes on this petal of this flower, and then the tiger goes on this leaf in this particular orientation and like in this part of the leaf. And then, I'll take the eagle and put it in the middle of this flower right here. So I arranged everything extremely neatly, and I had like a very precise, definite way of arranging everything. They had to go in a certain order, facing a certain way. Everything had to be perfect, and then I'd like arrange everything and then take it apart and then arrange it again, and this in the same way, in the same procedure, and then take it apart and then arrange it again. And I would like that was how I played as a child. I'd spend hours doing that.
What would happen if that arrangement was disrupted?
Oh, I'd throw a fit.
Okay. Because I know a lot of kids, play that way. Like, they'll arrange things a certain way or order things a certain way. But I guess the difference between that and OCD is that for you, it was a bigger deal.
Yeah, I mean...
Or like an obsession, you would say.
Yeah, because I was experiencing a lot of anxiety surrounding it. It wasn't just like, this is how I like it to be. But it's like, if it's not this way, bad things will happen. If it's not this way, like, I will freak out. like, I'll have insurmountable anxiety. I'll like panic. I'll... have a temper tantrum. Like, it was really distressing as a child.
Parents notice?
They noticed that something was wrong and that I was a weird child, but they're not educated on these topics, so they're just like, well, that's just how she is.
Were you eventually able to articulate this anxiety to them, or did you have to, did they take you to see a professional first?
It wasn't them precisely. When I started seeing a therapist when I was 13, 8th grade, and it's because a teacher noticed my like really disruptive compulsions, the way I'd like arrange things on my desk and like move things around. And my teacher, I suppose, recognized the symptoms and referred me to the school psychologist, who then, just talked to me a little bit and like, yeah, that's like very much OCD.
Wow, it must have been pretty obvious if, it was enough to make a teacher notice.
Yeah, well, I also wasn't hiding it.
Okay. And that's really cool that she did notice, because I would consider that a less common, at least it's common, but I guess like not enough people know the symptoms if they were looking at it in the face.
Oh, yeah. This teacher was a very good teacher. She was very nice to me and understanding.
Okay, so you went to see the school counselor, and how did you feel about that? Were you afraid?
Wow, that's actually an interesting question. I don't think so. I think I knew I needed help because, like I've been repeating throughout this interview, it's like, if I was doing all these things and they made me feel good and it was fun, then that would not exactly be a disorder, that'd just be like, fun hobbies, arranging things. I love it. But like it was causing me a lot of distress and like mental anguish because I just like I have to do these things and I can't control it. Like this is happening against my will and I'm suffering while doing it. So I was not having a good time. Which is where like the depressive symptoms come in, because like if I feel like I'm not in control of my actions, not in control of my thoughts, and it's distressing, I'm not going to be happy, like it's really hard to be happy when this is happening in your head and in your life and it's not in your control. So I was definitely like down a lot. Yeah, but going back to the therapy, that was when I started therapy, and I have been in therapy every year since.
And how many therapists have you had?
Maybe like 10. Every year or two they'd switch. So like I had one in 8th grade, and then in 9th and 10th grade in high school I had one, and then 11th and 12th grade in high school I had a different one, and then in college I had 2 or 3 different ones, and now I am seeing like a whole different one. Like in high school and college I used my like student status, I guess, because they provided free counseling to students. To this day, I think like it's extremely important to have mental health professionals available to students free of charge.
Oh yeah.
It's like it's one of the major responsibilities of an educational institution, I think. Like you got to look out for your students' well-being. And that's not just like, are they getting their homework done, but it's like, are they suicidal? Like because some of them probably are, and you better take care of that.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree.
I was lucky enough to be able to take advantage of the mental health services at my various schools. And then, I'm not in school anymore, but I have health insurance, thank God. Like that's a privilege to have health insurance.
Yeah.
And I take advantage of it by seeing a therapist, and it's covered. Most of it is covered by my insurance. I have a copay, but it's not nearly as bad as it would be without insurance. So I do consider myself blessed that I have access to services and resources to help me out, because if I didn't have these resources, who knows where I'd be. It has genuinely helped. Like I owe my life to some of these therapists. Like they're really good people, and I'm really grateful.
I'm really happy that you had access to that. What kind of treatment have the therapists suggested for your OCD over the years?
Well, treatments in general for OCD tend to be either medication or therapy, or a combination of both. Really, like the best is a combination of both. I am actually not on medication and never have been. But
is that for a particular reason? Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm wary of side effects because the medications that you would use to treat it are SSRIs and SNRIs, and those have side effects, and you got to consider the cost benefit for you as an individual, because like for a lot of people the benefit of taking SSRIs far outweighs the side effects, and for them it's worth it and necessary, and that's awesome if it's working for them. I am doing a really good job managing my condition with therapy alone, so I feel like I don't need medication at this point, is how I feel. I don't want to have to experience those side effects.
What would you say is really common for people with OCD to take?
Let's see. My friend was taking Lexapro.
Okay. And that's an antidepressant, right?
Yeah, that's an SSRI.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I should know that.
Yeah, that class of medications is used for depression and anxiety disorders. Oh, I should give like the rundown on the classification of OCD. So it is classified under the category of anxiety disorders, of which there are typically, like if you're a psychologist, there are 5 anxiety disorders. There's generalized anxiety, OCD, panic disorder, PTSD, and social phobia.
Okay.
And those are like the 5 general categories. And a lot of people will have more than one category, or experience different categories to different degrees, and because it's not all black and white, but
right.
That's how psychologists break it down.
So which categories have you experienced?
Mostly just OCD. I've had panic attacks in the past, but they were always kind of like caused by OCD and its complications, so I probably my psychologist does not diagnose me with panic disorder, despite experiencing some panic attacks. So that's how another example of how it's not black and white.
So you don't take medication yourself?
No, I do not. I do therapy. Yeah, I do cognitive behavioral therapy.
Sorry, we're like, so I feel like I'm so excited to ask you all these questions. I'm like getting ahead of myself.
Oh, I should also, yeah, before we talk about therapy, I'm remembering one more thing. The different types of OCD, and this goes back to your question earlier about the stereotypes in media.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask you if you if you had examples.
I totally didn't answer that question. I'm gonna answer it now.
Okay, go for it. I'm gonna stop interrupting.
Okay, sorry. No, I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry.
Oh my god, we're so bad at this.
It's okay. Hopefully, your listeners will find it endearing. All right, so types of OCD. Generally, people will have like a general theme of their obsessions, and it tends to be different between people. So there are people who you'd call like the germaphobe classification, where their obsessions center on germs and dirt and like cleanliness in that way, like sterility. The stereotype there being like the person who constantly washes their hands or like constantly uses hand sanitizer because they're afraid of the germs, and like they won't shake hands with people because they're afraid of the germs. Like that's one type of OCD. Another one is what I have, which is organization and symmetry and the arrangement of items in space, where obsessions center around how items are arranged and, where they need to go and like how you can manipulate them with your hands and, just like organization type obsessions. Another one is people who have worrisome thoughts about like taboo topics like violence or sex or religion. They'll have like intrusive thoughts about.
I was gonna ask, isn't that does that usually mean there's some OCD going on, or is that like a separate thing?
Some people with OCD have intrusive thoughts as a symptom.
I guess that's what I meant. Like, I guess intrusive thoughts can be a symptom for many different mental illnesses.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely, especially this like subcategory where that is characterized by intrusive thoughts about like violence and sex and religion. I don't know. I read a short story, I guess, a while ago where the main character was this guy who like had like vivid, recurring, uncontrollable, and distressing fantasies about stabbing his wife to death. And it just like totally ruined his life because he didn't actually want to stab her to death, but it was just like he couldn't stop thinking about it and it drove him crazy. And then he had to like go on a road trip to get away from his wife because he was afraid that he was going to stab his wife. And so like it was a work of fiction, but it actually did a, I guess, not awful job of depicting this subtype of OCD where like you have these thoughts and they distress you and they're, about violence or sex or religion. Which are taboo topics in our society, which is also an example of how society contributes to the manifestation of OCD, because at least in this subtype, the topics that society considers taboo are the ones that the brain fixates on and drives the sufferer crazy with.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'm sure in a parallel universe in a different society that had different taboos, people with this brain disorder would focus on those taboos and not ours,
I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
What role society had in that. And that's really interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so what kind of things can you do to combat those symptoms in therapy?
Yeah. A lot of what we do there is talk about what I'm experiencing and how to kind of react to it and like answer it in my own head, especially when it comes to behaviors, because, like I explained at the top of the show, I have like the whole like obsessions or this thought and I'm fixating and it's causing me distress and I need to do something to alleviate the stress that's building up with this thought. So I do an action and that action is a compulsion. And sometimes they're pretty benign.
Like what, for example?
Yeah, like one that I have currently is that I have a backpack that I take to and from work with me, and every item in my backpack needs to go in a certain pocket in a certain order. So every morning I need to load my backpack, put every item exactly where it needs to be. They need to go in the correct order and at the correct rate. And I need to organize everything. And then when I unpack my backpack, I need to take everything out in the same order, like, the reverse of that order.
Yeah.
And everything has its place and everything needs to be arranged just so all the labels have to be facing the front. And then in my mind, it'll be like, they have to go in this way. And if they don't, I'll lose my shit. Like I will freak out. Like something bad will happen. Something existentially bad will happen if I don't organize everything exactly the way it needs to go. And then if I am like packing my backpack and I feel like, wait, I did something wrong, I have to unpack it and then I have to repack it. And then like it's repacked. I'm like, wait, is everything in the correct order? Like then I have to unpack it and repack it again. And then I can do this over and over. And it's just like this repetitive cycle of anxiety.
And
I'm like
exhausting.
I'm losing time, I'm losing energy, but I have to do it until I feel like I've done it right. Because if I haven't done it right, my brain goes like, something awful will happen. Like the world will end. You're gonna, your loved ones are all gonna die. They're gonna drop dead if you don't organize your backpack the correct way. That's what's going through my head.
I was gonna ask about that. Is it just like a vague feeling that something bad's gonna happen, or in your mind do you really believe something bad will happen?
I don't really believe it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's part of what therapy taught me. I think as a child, I really truly believed that something bad was going to happen, and that's why I did it. But through therapy, I've been able to like talk through it and be like, you know what? Like, this is how anxiety tricks you. It tells you that something bad is going to happen, but it's lying. This is something that's going on in your head, and you can't control it, and it's a brain system gone haywire. That's part of what therapy has helped me, because what we do in therapy is we look at these behaviors that I do and then categorize them like, are they hurtful? Are they not? Somewhere in between. Like the packing my backpack, it's annoying and it takes time, but at the end of the day, it's pretty benign. Like I'm not hurting anyone and I'm not hurting myself. Well, there are some compulsions that are worse.
I was going to say, like, yes, there are some compulsions that are undoubtedly worse, and we will talk about those. But also, it can hurt you if you do it every day, and let's say like it keeps you from getting to work on time, and if that happens enough, you could receive a corrective action or even lose your job, and that's very detrimental to your life. And I think it's these little examples you keep listing just adding up and interfering with your quality of life.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you want to hear that, the dorm room door lock thing, my senior year especially of college, I lived in a dorm room, and my door locked. So every morning before I went to class, I'd have to, lock my door like a normal person. So I would leave my room and then lock the door and then walk down the hallway. And then at the end of the hallway, I'd be like, wait, is the door locked? And I'd have to walk back to my room, unlock the door, relock it, walk down the hallway. And then I got to the end of the hallway. It's like, wait, is my door locked? So I have to go back and check the lock. And I do that like 10, 15, 20 times before class. And I was late to class like pretty often.
Yeah, that adds up.
Because, I was lucky that the class in question, I had a pretty lenient professor, and this is also college, so it's not like high school where they take attendance.
Right.
So I didn't, in this particular case, I didn't actually get in trouble, but I did show up to class late, and it was 100% as a result of my compulsions. I just had to check the lock, and every time I walked away, I'd like be anxious. I'm like, what if it's undone? Like, what if my door isn't locked? Like, what if my stuff gets stolen? What if, I don't know, like something's going to happen. I have to check the lock.
Did you feel like your OCD got worse as you got through college?
Actually, no, the reverse. It was worse at the beginning and it got better over time.
Okay. Did any of your professors know about it, or was that something you kept private?
Generally, I did not tell people I tell my close friends, and I actually did have some advisors in college who I was very close with. I went to a small private college where it was very easy to become friends with your professors, and nice. I did. And so I had some professors who I consider my mentors and who I'm still in contact with today. And yeah, I did share a little bit about my mental health struggles with them, and they were all very understanding. Like, again, I have had so many supportive, understanding, and like just really good adults in my life growing up that have really helped me. Like, you can imagine an alternate universe version of myself who didn't have this support, and like, who knows how shitty my life would be if I was even still alive. Like, not to be dramatic, but like,
no, totally. I think it's important to not take that for granted.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah, and the fact that you're recognizing it, I know a lot of people who do struggle with mental illness feel like they're alone. Like, they could, in reality, be surrounded by people who love them and care about them, but sometimes when you're in the throes of a mental illness, it's easy to forget.
Yeah. Part of the suffering is feeling like you're alone and like there's nothing that can be done. But a lot of time, if you reach out, someone will listen. Like, the world is full of good people. not everyone is going to want to help you, but there are some people like, mental health professionals whose job it is to help you, or teachers or professors or advisors who like they're in that position because they want to help students. And, that goes for young adults who are students. But, like
Right.
if you're an older adult with a job, like there are still mental health professionals. There's always someone. There are family members and friends. Like there are support groups for your particular condition. Like rarely is there a person who truly has nothing.
Yeah, I mean, even online communities are so powerful. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously we
exactly.
met through one, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of help available in different channels that never existed before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're not taking advantage of those, I mean, it can be really hard when you're like depressed, for instance. Sometimes it's impossible to talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
that's just, the nature of the beast, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So because OCD is so misrepresented in the media, and I would even say trivialized.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Have you ever felt like that prevented you from asking for help?
No.
Or telling people about it because you thought they would like misunderstand, I guess?
Yes, absolutely. I do try to keep it on the down low most of the time because I do think people are going to misunderstand what it is that I'm going through. So yeah, I definitely keep it quiet because of the misrepresentation. But as far as asking for help goes, if it's somebody who like knows what they're talking about, like a mental health professional or an online support community, they're not going to misunderstand. Like those are the people whose job it is, whose passion it is to take you seriously.
Right.
So it's never prevented me from reaching out, but it has prevented me from being open.
What are some like main things you wish that people knew about OCD that they don't?
I wish they knew that it was involuntary. I think one of the perceptions that people have is that these are just people who like being clean, or like, who maybe they understand that like this, they feel the need, like that it's extremely necessary to be clean. But I don't think they realize that people who are doing these compulsions, it's because in their head, like there's something going on and it's distressing and it's ruining their lives. And the compulsions are just the physical manifestation of the turmoil in their head. At work, I have a desk and it's within a pod of other coworkers, and like they can see that my desk is extremely organized. Like they've seen me sterilize my bench top every week. Like, they see these symptoms, but I think that they think that I'm just a really clean person. I'm just like extremely organized. My everything is very organized and clean and neat, and that they probably just assume that's the kind of person I am. But in reality, I'm like, no, like it needs to be like this
or
because anxiety. Yeah, like.
I mean, I used to consider myself one of those people who would notice people do that type of thing and just think to myself, wow, they're really anal. Or like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm also guilty of, performing certain tasks like that and then joking around and just saying, oh, I have OCD, don't mind me, and I think it's something that not a lot of people take seriously. And I think it's important to prevent the spread of misinformation about that. Sure. And like to keep educating people. Like that's one of the reasons I love this podcast, is because I get to learn about so many different perspectives and topics that I'd never was introduced to before.
Yeah, that's so valuable, just being aware and being educated.
Yeah, I mean, the education really never ends.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think we are entering like an age where mental health is starting to be talked about more, and I think that's awesome, but there are lots of misrepresentations still out there.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of like OCD in the media, like good or bad?
That's a pretty good question. I'm probably not the best person for that because I actually don't watch TV or TV shows or movies or listen to popular music or I mean, I do know that I think there's a game show called The Price is Right, that might be it, where the host has OCD and his like trademark is that he gives contestants fist bumps instead of handshake, and he's just like, oh, fist bump whenever they go for a handshake, and then off the air he's admitted it's because he has germaphobe OCD and he is afraid of the germs on their hands, so he'll only fist bump his contestants. So that's an example of a real person with OCD and how it's impacting their life, although on his game show, like it's not a thing, like that's his thing. He fist bumps, like that's right. How he is. So like, and no one really realizes that like it's because he has OCD. I work in molecular biology and I typically work with bacteria and like cellular organisms. So if I was a germaphobe, I I don't even want to think about it. Like, I work with bacteria and I'm not afraid of them. I actually kind of like them. They're pretty fascinating little buggers.
I was gonna.
And
That was
yeah.
actually a point on my list of stuff to ask you, was how it affects your work.
Oh, well, how it affects my work. I think being as organized as I am actually makes for a great scientist. I definitely think that choosing to become a scientist was absolutely the correct career choice for me. And it's half personality. I mean, mostly personality. It's about what interests me. And there's a whole bunch of things in choosing a career, but I will not deny that the fact that I am extremely organized definitely helps me.
Okay, that's something that I actually am really curious about, what your opinion is of this. I've always kind of disliked the term mental illness because it implies something just inherently bad. It's interesting that you said that it can be almost a strength. I don't know, more like part of your personality or part of who you are rather than a disability. But on the other hand, it is absolutely a disability. And like, people have gone on disability for their mental illness. And I don't know, I think it's interesting to me to just kind of look at it from different perspectives.
Yeah, there's no denying that my life experience includes OCD, and as a result of that, I have characteristics that make me good at certain things.
Yeah.
That does bring up like an interesting debate. What's the line between neurodiversity and mental illness?
Exactly.
So the way I think about it is that if someone is mentally ill, it's called that because they experience distress in relation to their characteristics.
Okay.
Like, you have a person and they have certain characteristics because of the way their brain chemistry is, because of the way their brain structure is, maybe because of the way they were raised. And, for whatever reason, they have a set of characteristics. Now, if they're just chilling and they have no distress and they're just, this is how I am, it makes me happy and there's no problem with it, then great, they're just neurodiverse. I have so much trouble with that word.
I've never heard that word before. I love it.
Yeah. I think it's one of the newer words
I
in
feel
the community,
like
but
we need a t-shirt. I'm not sick. I'm neurodiverse.
yeah, maybe. But yeah, so like if it's not distressing, then that's great. If it is, however, impacting their life negatively, if they're experiencing distress or negative consequences of their behavior or thoughts, that's probably where we'd call it an illness, right? Because they feel like something's not right and they want it to change. Right now, that is my working definition, my working difference between the two.
I think that's really important to talk about too, because I want like, you can try to embrace it or you can try to get help. But like, what point do you pursue either path? And sometimes it's not all black and white either. Like let's go back to how it affects you at work. So you said you're very organized at work and you make a great scientist. Are there any ways it's affected you negatively?
Thus far, not really. Because, like I said before, I'm very lucky that the type of OCD I have is about organization and not germophobia, because that means that I can be a molecular biologist and I can work with bacteria and microbes and I'm not scared of them and I'm not preoccupied with them. And I mean, I'm sure if I did have germaphobe OCD, then I wouldn't have chosen that career choice.
Right.
At this point, I'm pretty good at managing it because I have had so many years of therapy. And when we'll go back to like the things I've done in therapy to help me, because we were in the middle of that one before we went on a tangent.
I love the tangents, by the way.
Yeah. So, oh shit, what was I talking about?
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Oh, the way it's affected me at work. So actually, like, not really, because I'm managing it pretty well. And the way it manifests, at least in the real world, I mean, in the outside world, that's not in my head, is that I'm just extremely organized. And, I never lose anything. I never make messes. I don't. I'm like very procedurally oriented. I'm very good at following steps in a certain order and doing it the same way every time, which is actually like a massive skill. If you're going to be a scientist, you need to know how to follow protocol. Seriously. Do it the same way every time, reproducible results, stuff like that. So that has actually been an asset. I'm very good at keeping data and organizing it and manipulating the data. I mean, that's just like a skill of mine and not OCD, but I'm good at numbers. Yeah, thus far, it has not impacted my career. It has impacted my education in that if I'm late to class, you're missing that 10 minutes of lecture at the beginning, and then maybe you'll miss something important. So it's affected me in that way. And also that, like, especially in middle and high school, there were times when I was so preoccupied with my obsessions and compulsions that I just like could not focus, and I couldn't do my homework, and I couldn't study because this was taking all of my time and mental energy. So, I mean, if I have had negative impacts on my life, it's one, in the distress that I experience, and two, in the amount of time and energy it saps from the rest of my life.
So I want to talk about relationships.
Yeah.
So, first of all, are you in a relationship right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do they know about your OCD?
Oh, yeah, very, very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a girlfriend, and she and I were friends before we started dating, and she definitely knew about my OCD because I don't like go shouting it from the rooftops, but if I become close enough with someone, I'll tell them like this is a fact of my life, and this will explain some of my behaviors, and it'll also help you respect my boundaries, I guess, because like if I do have everything organized on my desk in a certain way and someone comes and messes it up, like I will be angry.
Yeah.
So like don't move my shit. So like I have to tell people like, it's really important to me that this is a certain way. Please just let me have that. And it's the reason is because OCD, and like I'm sorry this impacts you, but like that's just a reality of my life. So please respect it in XYZ ways. And they're always okay with it. Like I've never had someone who was a dick about it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask like if you've ever struggled with people not understanding, or I mean, I know you said you had a problem sharing with people in the first place.
Sometimes people don't understand, but I've never had anyone be a dick about it.
That's
which
good.
is good. Yeah, that's nice.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. But yeah, so for relationships, yeah, my girlfriend definitely knew before we started dating. Like when we were already friends for years before we started dating, so we knew each other pretty well. We had already like laid all of our dirty laundry on the table before we even started dating. So yeah, she's very understanding and very supportive and loves me anyway, which I'm extremely thankful for.
How are some ways that you suggest people approach OCD with a loved one?
The first thing you should do is ask, like, how does this manifest in your life? And like, not just like what kind do you have and what are your symptoms, but like you have this condition, like what is it that you are fixating on any given day? And if it has something to do with me or the way I interact with you, like let me know so I can be sensitive to it. Definitely listening to someone and being sympathetic and being sensitive to their accommodations if they need any. And some people might not need accommodations and some might need them. It depends on the person. And not accommodation, like, oh my God, when I say that word, I think like, every building should have a ramp for wheelchair users because it's an accommodation for their disability. And like, that's kind of what I mean. And also kind of not what I mean. Like what I mean is, like for me, my girlfriend knows that when we go on trips together and we're staying in a hotel room, I need like one part of the room, like one small part, one dresser or whatever, dresser top, and I need that space, and I will arrange my stuff the way it needs to be arranged. And that is my space, and that is within my control. And I just need to have a little area, a physical area in my life at all times that I feel like I control. And that makes me feel safe, and that lets me channel all of my anxious energy and my like organizational needs, I guess.
Right.
I'm able to, at this point, because I've like done so much therapy and self-awareness and practice, is that I'm able to kind of compartmentalize my obsessions and compulsions, and I can channel them into a benign vehicle, I guess, which usually ends up being like when we go somewhere, I need a small physical space that is mine, and I will arrange my items within this physical space in the way that I feel like they need to be arranged, and this is how it's going to be, and no one else touch it. Like, this is my space. This is, my 2x2 foot area of space where all of my items are. That is mine. Do not move it. Everything in there is exactly how it needs to be, and if you move it, I will be anxious about it, and then I will have to fix it immediately because I cannot do anything else unless this area is perfect. So my girlfriend knows that. Whenever we go on a trip, I'm like, this dresser is mine. And she's like, okay. And then I arrange all my stuff on the dresser the way it needs to be arranged, and she doesn't touch it, and we go along with our lives.
That's amazing. When we talked earlier, you did mention the compartmentalizing. Could you elaborate a little more on that? Would you consider
Yeah.
it a coping method?
Um, yeah, I
Or,
guess you could call it a coping method. It's a way to manage yourself, because so I should go back to like how cognitive behavioral therapy has led me to be able to live with this. So there's a lot about like being aware of what it is you're doing and why, being able to stop in a moment of intense emotion or intense energy and ask like, wait, what is going on here? What are your thoughts? Why are you thinking these thoughts? How are they impacting your behavior? And just like take a moment and think about this. And it really helps me. Like when I'm having these very irrational thoughts, like, if my, I don't know, my pencil case is not in exactly this corner of my desk, then all of my loved ones will drop dead. And then like I'm having that worry, that anxiety, that obsession. And then I can be like, wait, stop, think about this. Is that rational? Why do you think this? Why do you think that all your family members will drop dead? Do you think that's actually true, or is that just something that anxiety is telling you? And think about it rationally and game it out in your head. If this pencil case is a few inches to the left, is that going to kill anyone? I don't think so. So just like take a deep breath and try to manage yourself. Like that's me talking to myself in my own head.
and this all happens in the span of like a few seconds.
Yeah, like a minute.
Yeah.
Just, it takes about as long as it took for me to say it out loud, because I am saying the words in my head. Because that, like the focus, the awareness, the self-awareness, and the, not really meditation, but it's like meditative, where I'm like being extremely self-aware and looking at my own thoughts from the most separate, rational perspective that I can manage at that moment. I take a deep breath and I just, I talk myself down from that ledge. And over time, I've gotten better at it.
It does take a lot of practice to do that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is the result of literal years of like therapy. Like I started therapy when I was 13. I'm 23 now. I've been in therapy for 10 years working on this. And it's definitely gotten better over time because I have become more skilled in managing myself and managing my emotions. Because like ultimately it just boils down to what's happening in my own head.
Yeah.
And sometimes the obsessions are all consuming and I literally cannot think of anything else because I'm just like so consumed by what's going on in my head and I can't handle it. But over time, those become less and less often as I get better. Those events become less and less frequent as I get better at like taking a step back and just talking myself down and, just self-awareness. Like it takes, this is how I personally have learned to manage myself. And, this approach might not be one size fits all.
No.
But this is what has worked for me, and cognitive behavioral therapy has really worked for me. And as just feeling like I have someone who will listen to me.
Yeah,
like part of
really
going
important.
to therapy is, it's like, I wouldn't say I'm friends with my therapist, but like she feels friendly to me. Like I go in there and we sit down and she pays attention to me and I tell her what I'm going through and she nods and like, she believes me and cares about me and is taking me seriously. And then lately what I've been talking about in therapy is how my self-image, like my idea of my own body, is impacting my self-esteem, I guess. And I'll tell her, like, I have, quite the exercise habit where I feel like I need to exercise for 2 to 3 hours every single day, or else I will just instantly gain 100 pounds overnight. I will wake up and, and be a contestant for my 600-pound life. And that's just what's going to happen.
OCD combined with eating disorders is just a recipe for disaster.
I was telling this to my therapist a few days ago, and she was like, wait, like, think about this. Think about the calories. So, okay, that 3,500 calories is 1 pound of fat. And, like, let's say your workout burns X amount of calories. Now, let's say you don't do that workout. So that X amount of calories, that's how many calories are still in your body. Is that 3,500? And I'll be like, no, it's not. And she's like, so how many calories does it take to gain 100 pounds? And I'll be like, multiply 3,500 by 100, and that's like 3,500,000. I think that's 350,000. So she'll be like, okay, so the calories you're not burning by exercising is X. And then in order to gain 100 pounds, that's 350,000 calories. Like, let's look at those numbers. Is that rational? I'll be like, no, it's not rational. And she's like, okay, now every time you have that thought, do it in your own head. I don't need to tell you anymore. You now know this, and now talk yourself down from that fear by doing that rationalization in your own head. And that's one of the tactics.
It's the healing power of science.
Yeah.
That was really soothing to listen to, actually.
Yeah, it's
because your mind
it's
can
the
take,
rational. Yeah,
your mind can take facts and just bend them completely out of proportion, and you don't even know what's real anymore. So sometimes it does help having someone just straight up tell you the facts.
Yes, exactly.
I had something else I was going to ask you, but so this might be kind of ignorant of me to ask. Is OCD something that you can quote unquote recover from, or is it something you think you'll live with for the rest of your life?
Generally, no. There's no cure. You can manage it, and you can manage it, which I think that I am. And management is on a spectrum. Like, you can be better or worse at management. You can use a combination of medication and therapy to lessen symptoms. And some people might even get to a point where they have no symptoms, and that's awesome. But that doesn't mean they'll have no symptoms for the rest of their life. Like, it's not gone. It's just being managed, you know?
Exactly.
Doing the techniques and behaviors and thought patterns or whatever it takes for you to lessen the severity of your symptoms, to remove the distress from your symptoms, to like stop behaviors if that's relevant for you, just like all of this management that you can do to reduce the negative impact that your mental illness has on your life.
And that's a really worthy endeavor for your life, is just to constantly be trying to figure out how to live better. Like, I mean, I've been throwing around that idea in my head recently whenever I feel suicidal. It's just like, maybe the point of life is to just keep learning about how to make yourself a little bit happier and how to make others around you a little bit happier. You know, maybe there's no better purpose to life than that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as long as you wake up and try to make every day a tiny bit better than the last, and that's progress and that's valuable.
Totally agree. So going back to the whole food issue with you.
Yes.
You said that affected you pretty strongly and still affects you pretty strongly. How would you tie that in with your OCD more specifically?
So the disordered eating symptoms I experience are driven by organization and cleanliness, and I guess it's like closer to ortho maybe, although I do count calories.
Can you define that for people who might not know?
Oh, yeah, just like orthorexia in quotes is, I guess, a type of eating disorder that is characterized by the all-consuming desire to eat only like the quote-unquote cleanest or purest or best foods, which may or may not be coupled with a desire for thinness. It often manifests in athletes, which I am and always was an athlete my entire life.
I know with eating disorders, a common theme is the desire for control, the desire to be perfect. It seems to me like there's a lot of common themes in OCD as well.
Oh, yeah. It's such a cliche, but it's about control. Like, at least for me, it's 100% about control, because I've been dancing around it, but like how it impacts my eating habits is that, like, you know, there is an array of safe foods that I have, and I need to eat these foods, and I can't eat any other foods, and I have to eat them in this combination, and I have to eat them at this time of day. I have to eat them like in this order. I start my morning with clementines. You know, the delightful little citrus fruits. I love them. And they have to be the first thing I eat every morning. They just have to. I have to eat 100 calories worth of clementines every single morning.
What if they're not?
Oh, I mean, either I have a meltdown, but, you know, that's how it used to be. But now it's more like I will talk myself down from him. Like, well, you know, what you're really worried about here is vitamin C. So let's eat another food that is rich in vitamin C. And then I can kind of like assuage that anxiety. Is like, what if I don't get enough vitamin C? Well, no, because you're getting it from this other food. And so just shut the fuck up. So, like, if I do eat over my limit on certain days, I can, like, talk myself down from that. I've gotten better at that. But, like, I have rules surrounding food, and I have these rules because I feel like if I do something outside of these rules, then I'll get anxiety, and I'll get this obsession, like, what if XYZ happens? Like,
it seems like eating disorder is not necessarily like a symptom of the OCD, but rather like a channel to pour it into.
Yeah, I have talked about this with my therapist a lot, and I wonder that if we lived in a society that did not have this like bizarre obsession with food and weight, then my OCD might never have clamped onto that, you know?
Yeah.
Like I might be spending all of my time and attention trying to control my life in another way, and not in a food way or a weight way, but just like, I don't know, like if our society was obsessed with like, oh, I can't even think of an example, like hairstyles.
Yeah.
Like you have to have this kind of hair and it has to look like this and it has to be this length. I'd be like, my OCD would just grab right onto that and be like, let's go, bitch. Like,
yeah, your brain latches onto whatever it can find, whatever helps soothe the compulsions or obsessions, rather.
Yeah, both. Yeah, it soothes the obsessions through the channel of compulsions. But
do you watch The Twilight Zone?
No, I don't.
Oh, man. Well, first of all, do you know what it is?
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay, there's this episode where this patient is in a hospital having just had a major surgery on her face, and a nurse walks into the room, and you see that the nurse's face is a pig's face. And the patient, like, leaps up from the bed and starts running through the hospital. The patient, by the way, is a very beautiful woman. Mm-hmm. And everyone in the hospital just has a pig face. And the patient, at the very end of the episode, she looks in the mirror and she sees that she's a beautiful woman, and she starts screaming and writhing on the ground in terror because I guess everyone in that universe looks like a pig, and like her surgery was failed and she was like ugly.
She's not like everyone else.
She's ugly in their eyes. I don't know. I saw that when I was a kid. It's kind of cheesy, but my mind was blown. I was like, whoa, how much of what I think is really beautiful is because of society.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Beauty standards are culturally bound, and it's a result of the culture and time in which I live, that I have XYZ ideals in my head, and then because I have OCD, I'm like, well, I need to exquisitely control every aspect of my life and body and mind, so I have to use this as a vehicle for control. So it all plays together like that.
Do you have any coping methods that involve letting go of control?
No.
Like, I mean, like, have you ever like intentionally tried to let go in as a method of like helping yourself, or is that something that people with OCD do? Is that recommended?
The way I think about it is that I can, if I'm on a ledge, I can try to talk myself down. Like if I eat some 100 calories above my daily limit, I can look at it and be like, you know, like, okay, you were not able to 100% control every single one of your actions today, and you're upset about that, but it's not going to hurt you in the grand scheme of things. It's pretty meaningless. Like, you know, let's rationalize this and let's talk myself down from that ledge. So I guess that's kind of letting go of control by recognizing what is essential to control and what isn't. Yeah. And maybe sometimes I can convince myself that maybe sometimes some of the foods I eat or some of the exercise I do or don't do, maybe I don't need to control every single like bit of that, because in the end it's actually not going to make a difference.
And that's scary to say, it's not going to make a difference, because all your thoughts revolve around that. But again, the power of science and logic. Do you have anything else you want to add? Or I think we covered a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, we did.
I'm like sitting in my room sweating my non-existent balls off right now, because I always turn off all the fans and like close all the windows when I record these, because otherwise there would be a lot of background noise. But like my room is on the top floor of a house and all the heat just rises up. So I've just been sitting here talking to you, just like blotting my face with a tissue this whole time.
Oh no. But speaking of background noise, like I know you probably heard some birds and airplanes maybe.
A little bit. Yeah, I'll try to edit out what I can, but also, you know, if there's a few birds in the background, whatever. It's part of it's endearing, as you said earlier.
I'm walking around my neighborhood and around a small pond in my neighborhood, which is where the birds are. They're red-winged blackbirds, and they're kind of circling around my head because I think they view me as a threat. So I'm kind of like trying to. No, I mean they can be aggressive. One time I was biking and a red-winged blackbird it like swooped at me and kind of like pecked me once with its beak and then flew away. It didn't like hurt that much.
That's
I was like, oh.
my worst nightmare though. I always see birds swoop towards me when I'm like walking or whatever, and I always am afraid that they're gonna hit me, but then they never do. But like the fact that one of them did hit you is kind of unsettling.
But yeah, it's typically the red-winged blackbird. They tend to be the most aggressive of birds that a human will encounter.
Fine.
You know, so keep an eye out for those. So yeah, I'm just like walking around and they're kind of like circling around their nests. So I know, I'll just like go somewhere where their nest isn't.
Okay, this episode will be accompanied by a picture of a red-winged blackbird, so everyone can look out for them. No, yeah. for real though, I love how you're always posting stuff like nature facts and like pictures of the weather or like the tea you're brewing at the moment. I just love that.
Yeah, these are the small things about life that make me happy. Yeah. Part of my therapy is keeping a gratitude journal, and it's not just like, I'm happy for my health, I'm happy for my friends, but it's also like I'm happy for the flower I saw today. I'm happy for the tea I drank today. I'm happy that like, this person complimented my shoes. Like just the tiny things in life that put a little smile on your face and make you think that life is worth living. Like be grateful for those.
Oh my God, that's so
acknowledge
wholesome.
them. Ultimately, a good life is a life full of small, happy things.
I 100% agree. That's another way that society has fucked us up, is that it makes you think that you have to have this big purpose in life and you have to know what you want to do and you have to have a big effect on people, or I don't know. Maybe you don't have to do all that. Maybe that's okay. Maybe you can just make like small ripples instead of like a big splash.
Exactly. It's about knowing what brings you joy and working toward it.
Oh, this episode is so quotable. I'm just really impressed with us. Well, this was so much fun. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Oh my goodness. Thanks for opening my eyes to the wonderful world of OCD.
Yeah, and thank you for giving me a platform on which to talk about it, because I do think that it's important for people to hear stories and to, think about other people's experiences. And I also just like talking about myself. So
yes, who doesn't?
I appreciate that.
I get a few people who are like, oh, I might want to be on your podcast, but I feel like I don't have anything to say, or I'm afraid of talking about myself. But no, that's the whole point. Like, please talk about yourself for hours. Like, I want to know, and like the world needs to know, Well, I hope you have a good rest of your evening with your blackbirds.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
All right, yeah. Have a beautiful night.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye.